In breaking news, the United Kingdom is not backing down from Donald Trump as he pressures them to join his lawless war. In fact, they are leading a rally of solidarity with 35 other nations to find a non-death and destruction solution. And I have the story for you next. Let's begin this report with an example of countries shunning Trump and turning towards each other. Check out how France and Japan are getting cozy, like Donald and Stormy. And then I'll have the bombshell UK story. Well, it is both of these countries have a reliance on oil, particularly Japan, that depends on the Middle East for 95% of its oil imports. It is an unbelievable figure when you think of it because, Donald Trump has said in recent days, well, he's blown hot and cold on the Strait of Hormuz. First, calling on Europeans and NATO to come to his side to reopen it because of its importance, presumably. Then when they rebuffed that request, saying, we don't want to basically be dragged into your war, Mr. President, he then started trashing, he flipped his narrative, started trashing NATO, trashing the Europeans, and now this talk today about maybe pulling out of NATO, which he's calling a white tiger. All of that underscores the fact that the straightforward move is important, whether or not Donald Trump wants to acknowledge it on a given day or not. And it's especially important for the Asian countries and perhaps no more so than Japan. You noted that figure 90 to 95%. The US is more energy efficient, a lot more. It has its liquefied natural gas. It has its shale oil. It is on that front much less dependent. It's true on the Strait of Hormuz, even if American consumers are still hit at the pump by higher gas prices, which are set on the international markets. Doesn't have to do necessarily with the fact that US is less dependent on oil from the Strait. Have you ever had a mindless social media scroll session interrupted by a bully beatdown video? Normally, you find violence repelling, but there's something satisfying about watching a bully meet karma and receive his comeuppance. What is now happening in Europe has the same feel. Enter UK Prime Minister Starmer. The conflict in the Middle East has now entered a second month. And while we're working at pace for de-escalation and peace, it is now clear that the impact of this war will affect the future of our country. So today, I want to reassure the British people that no matter how fierce this storm, we are well placed to weather it and that we have a long-term plan to emerge from it a stronger and more secure nation. First, let me say once again, this is not our war. We will not be drawn into the conflict. That is not in our national interest. And the most effective way we can support the cost of living in Britain is to push for de-escalation in the Middle East and a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which is such a vital route for energy. To that end, we're exploring each and every diplomatic avenue that is available to us. The Foreign Secretary and the Chancellor have met their counterparts in the G7. The Defense Secretary has been in the Middle East speaking to our partners, and the UK has now brought together 35 nations around our statement of intent to push as one for maritime security across the Gulf. And today I can announce that later this week, the Foreign Secretary will host a meeting that brings those nations together for the first time, where we will assess all viable diplomatic and political measures that we can take to restore freedom of navigation, guarantee the safety of trapped ships and seafarers, and resume the movement of vital commodities. Following that meeting, we will also convene our military planners to look at how we can marshal our capabilities and make the strait accessible and safe after the fighting has stopped. Because I do have to level with people on this. This will not be easy. Did you hear that? 35 nations pushing as one against you-know-who. Since the UK is leading the dog pile, I'll give the final word to a British broadcaster who lands a punch of comedy on the tragedy that is Donald J. Trump. Now, every day that the war in Iran carries on, one thing becomes clearer and clearer, and that is everything about the entire conflict is becoming less clear, especially if you're depending on the word of Donald Trump. A man so reliable you could set your watch by him, as long as you're happy with it constantly telling you the time is half-ass. This week alone, he's claimed that the war is over. The war is not over. He's bombing a power plant. He's not bombing a power plant. He's doing a deal. He's not doing a deal. He's done a deal. He's not done a deal. Everyone's dead. Not everyone's dead. He's deploying troops. He's not deploying troops. There's regime change. There's no regime change. But he's definitely talking to Iran. Or maybe not talking to Iran because in a wonderful deployment of Iranian irony, Iran accused him of spreading fake news. If the fake tan man who cries fake is called a faker by a fakir, what the fake is going on?